Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to game 2 of this Heart of the Swarm show match between WhiteRa and BeastyQT. Hope you guys have all been enjoying Heart of the Swarm so far and have been having a great time playing it. As of I'm going to be starting to do some fan show matches, not really fan show matches I guess, but I want to start doing some 8-player FFAs and going on the Battle.net and playing with a bunch of you guys whenever I get a chance. So, you know, keep your eyes out for the Zerg player called Zerg Masta. That is my account name. But anyways, we are going to be going into game 2 here of this show match. WhiteRa has already started off with a bang, to say the least, going with that little proxy Stargate, but now it's going to be on a more familiar map. We are now on Daybreak, and you know, on this map I think it's a little bit harder to bust out that kind of cheese, especially since BeastyQT is probably going to check. I mean, he's probably going to send an SCV here, and he's probably going to send an SCV over here to make sure that none of the early shenanigans that WhiteRa is famously known for are going to happen here in game 2. We'll just have to keep our eyes peeled out and see what happens here. Now, once again, I just want to say, if you guys have any sick replays, links to sick replays, know any of the top players, feel free to have those replays or links sent into me at HDreplays@gmail.com. Loving the Heart of the Swarm so far. It's been out for a little under 2 weeks now, but the community has really taken it up. The games have just been coming out. It's been just a storm of awesome replay after awesome replay, and I've been really keeping up to date with it. But I've also haven't really been casting too much of multiplayer, so I'm starting things off here with this show match, and then after that I'll be, of course, bringing you guys the highlights, the best replays day in and day out. Just cannot wait as this game continues to evolve. Very, very exciting times. Now, will we see BeastyQT go for that little Widowmine play that was so cool in that last game? I really like going for Widowmines against Oracles, because I feel like it's a great way to shut them down, and you needn't waste early money on an engineering bay and get missile turrets down. You can just rely on your Widowmines. You do have to be a little careful about the splash damage that a mine can do to your own workers, but it's negligible because it still one-shots that Oracle, and if you micro well enough, even the splash damage that comes off the mine isn't usually life-threatening. So we'll see what happens here. New music now kicking in, of course. Loving it. We do have an assimilator coming up on the left side for WhiteRa. It looks like he's going double gas, as he's got a cybernetics core here and a gateway. Obviously now we can see a proxy Stargate, but it all comes down to this probe. What is WhiteRa going to do with it? Is he going to actually go for the same thing again? You know, usually pro players like to switch it up. They don't like to try the same thing 2 games in a row, because it just wouldn't make sense. The player is prepared for it. He'll probably have adequate defenses up in time. BeastyQT, will he go for a command center? Yeah, he will. He's building up inside the base right now, as the barracks is now building on a reactor core. So we are going to be having at least some early Marines coming out from Beasty, which is typically the way Terrans play against Protoss. Always has been. Marines, Marauders, and Medivacs, especially with the Medivacs now having that Ignite Afterburners. It is such a sick ability, and it allows a lot of good Terran players like QXC, who's really good with dropping, to be able to get inside the Protoss base and just harass with constant Marine pressure. Speaking of pressure right here, this SCV is under a little bit of pressure because he is now at the edge of the map and there's nowhere left to run, and he is going to die. So that Nexus is going to come up, and WhiteRa, of course, going for that quick expo, which on Daybreak is what you would normally expect from top players in Terran versus Protoss. Factory is on the way right now for BC as well, so we might see that mech play that was kind of burgeoning out in game 1, but never really saw it come to fruition because he did get shut down, or we might see him go into a quick starport. So it looks like BC wants to either go for Medivac early drops, or he wants to go for an early Banshee. Only time will tell what he exactly wants to do with that starport, but Marines right now are hanging out at the top of the ramp, not allowing the Stalker to come inside the base, but of course the Mothership Core can circumvent all of that, and it says, I want to see what you're doing right now, and WhiteRa even kills off the SCV building the starport as well. Now WhiteRa has to be, oh, he drops a Time Warp Field on the SCVs as well, so they cannot mine minerals as effectively. This is basically like, well, it's basically like harassing the enemy player's economy. Don't let them make money. Oh, this Stalker, though, is getting a little bit too close for comfort, and it is going to have to get out of there. Very nice reaction from WhiteRa right there, who is obviously trying to sneak in and maybe pick off a few Marines here or there, but he uses the Stalker wisely as a distraction, and now he realizes, hey, your SCVs aren't here, I'll bring the Mothership Core in, but he's got to be careful. That Widowmine just detonated on the whole of the Mothership Core, and it is not a sturdy unit. In fact, it will go down to those Marines, and now the question becomes, was it worth it? That Mothership Core going in. I mean, he was able to limit mining time very momentarily, which does add up, of course. He also delayed the starport a little bit, and more importantly, I think he got scouting information. So it might be a bit of a wash. Maybe WhiteRa taking a little bit more damage than he should have by losing that Mothership Core, but at least he knows what's going on here. He knows the Terran player has Marines and Widow Mines, and Medivacs are a possibility as well, so he's got to keep his perimeter secure here. In fact, he is going for Robotic Support Bay, which is a great idea because Colossus can shut down Marines and they can shut down Widow Mines. Widow Mines won't be able to do anything against Colossus at a long distance, so that's what WhiteRa's trying to go for right now, but that Medivac is now flying inbound. Will these 3 Stalkers be able to intercept before the units come out? I don't know. It looks like boosters are going to come on, and that's going to make it very hard for the Medivac to die, and so Empire.BeastyQT gets the drop off, but he decides not to drop. He leaves the Widow Mine, though, so it was an attempt to try to lay down some minefields. Unfortunately, that was not successful, but in the same time, BC comes in through the front door with a bunch of Marines, and WhiteRa now in a lot of trouble. I don't know if he's got enough forces. He's trying to get down the ramp right now. Widow Mine detonates on the Zealot. Meanwhile, Marines trying to micro away. The Medivac is no longer alive, so the Medivac is alive, so the Marines are getting some very necessary healage there, and finally, it looks like BCQT decides to pull out because of the Nexus and the Photon Overcharge that was going down from the Mothership Core. Very nice play right there by both players. Extreme micro to start this game off. BCQT isn't done yet, though. He says, I ain't done with this, and he comes back in one more time, but that Nexus and the overcharge lasts for 60 seconds, and while that Nexus is overcharged, it is very hard for a Medivac to be able to get in there and do any real significant amount of damage, so BCQT decides to pull out, and now he is going to hurry and rush those Marines back home. This is a 5-star flight right here, so it is going to be able to make it back home pretty soon here, and I'd imagine BC will go ahead and give that Medivac some necessary repairs. I mean, in the heat of battle there, I actually thought the Medivac went down. I didn't actually see that it was still alive, just barely, but as you guys can see now, with the Terran, you can repair, and he should be bringing an SCV here to give that Medivac some necessary repairs, and there it is. In fact, 4 SCVs. Really wants to make sure that it gets back up and running as quickly as is Terranly possible. Meanwhile, back at home, the engineering bay researching +1 weapons. We do have stim and combat shields on the way as well, so these Marines are about to get a hell of a lot stronger. And what will WhiteRa be able to do about that? He's got to get Colossus on the field. He's already got one. Second one on the way. Extended thermal lance is being researched out of the robotic support bay as well. Meanwhile, it looks like a couple of Stalkers finding themselves in no man's land. They've got to get out of there as BCQT is pushing in. This is the new age Terran style. It's not just all about Marines, Marauders, and Medivacs anymore, but now you can add in a little bit of mech. You can add in some Widow Mines to help your army with that extreme splash damage. One of the hardest things when it came to playing Marine, Marauder, Medivac was kiting endlessly against Zealot Archon. Well, guess what? With Widow Mines now, you don't have to worry about that anymore, because as you're pulling away, the Widow Mines will be able to make very short work of the Zealots. They do a ton of damage to Archons. Remember, Widow Mines have extra damage to shields, so they do, normally they do 125, but versus shields they do 160. So it is an extreme amount of damage, and in fact at 160 that is enough to kill off a Zealot in one shot, as well as killing off a Stalker. So it is a little strong, to say the least, against Protoss. So that's one thing that BCQT is obviously going to be relying on here as he's spreading out his forces. Has one Widow Mine down at the 3rd expansion, is now going to be bringing a double Medivac drop, triple Medivac drop, in fact 2 into the main base and 1 on the right hand side. It looks like he might want to pick off that probe first so he can deny the possibility of an expansion. Meanwhile, an observer is here for WhiteRa though, so he is aware of the possibility of a double Medivac, so he is going to bring his units in position in order to counter, but I don't know if that's enough. It's just a handful of Zealots and a Colossus. WhiteRa desperately needs to add on more, I think, more warp gates and bring out more units onto the field. Right now, he is sitting with a standard army of Colossus, Zealots, Sentry, and Stalkers, but he just, I don't know if he's got enough to defend against his drop. We'll see. He uses Photon Overcharge though, so that is obviously going to really bolster his defenses, and yeah, that double drop is out of there. And unfortunately for BCQT, unable to inflict any type of damage here on WhiteRa, and WhiteRa, as you guys all know, Protoss, when they approach the late game, they get stronger and stronger. Their splash damage increases exponentially. Of course, Terrans have been given a little bit of consideration here in the expansion. They do have Widow Mines. That is one form that they have in for late game splash, but it's not nearly as effective as, say, Colossus, Psionic Storm, and then eventually, if you want to get really nasty, you can go into the Mothership, you can go into Tempest as well for Protoss. So that's one thing that Beasty is going to have to be a little careful about, because he isn't playing a full mech style. He is playing pretty much bio right now, and as the game progresses, I think it loses its effectiveness. He'll have to watch out for that. Meanwhile, Templar Archives now has finished up for WhiteRa, so he will be able to start to get out some Psionic Storms, some Templar on the field momentarily, but for now he is focusing his gas efforts on charge. There we go. It looks like the upgrade has come for Templars, for the Templar Archives. That is the Psionic Storm, and in the top right-hand corner, we do have BeastyQT's Medivac still chilling back there. Of course, it can use Ignite Afterburners at any moment, come inside and do a ton of damage. WhiteRa will have to be very careful about that. I don't think he realizes, though, that there is that Medivac back there. And I know that BeastyQT does. He just moved it right there with one click, so we'll see if he decides to bring in a drop momentarily here. Meanwhile, the Terran player is on 3 bases, ladies and gentlemen. WhiteRa is not even on 3 bases yet, so he has fallen drastically behind in supply. Wow, Beasty has just taken a huge lead on the supply tab, and now he's coming in with his Viking enhanced army, and Vikings are a great counter to Colossus. I don't know what WhiteRa's going to be able to do about this. He doesn't have Storm yet. It's still about 30 seconds away from finishing, and so he will lose the Nexus, and BeastyQT beasting this Nexus down, and WhiteRa without an able-bodied response. He is actually going to lose a Colossus as well, which is not bueno, considering he already lost the Nexus at the expansion point. So now things are starting to really unravel for our Protoss hero. Will BeastyQT be able to solidify his advantage and capitalize and take a win away here to tie the series at 1 apiece? Only time is going to tell. We do have Mobius Reactor coming on that Ghost Academy, which is such a crucial upgrade for the Ghost, because that allows him, of course, to shoot out more EMPs, get a cloak that lasts a little bit longer as well, assuming, of course, we will have cloak coming on the way very soon. Following the Mobius Reactor and its completion. Meanwhile, BeastyQT now establishing another command center in the middle of the map, so he is just really starting to ramp up the economy, and WhiteRa is forced to double expand in order to make up for really his lack of economy this game. He's just been sitting, I think, a little bit too passively, hasn't been able to get the upper hand against his Terran opponent, and as a result, he has to take some risks. He's got to double expand right now, because if he doesn't, he is gonna just straight up lose the game if this goes on any longer, and he realizes that. So he's taking the risk and hoping that BC will not launch an attack anytime soon. The upgrades tab is showing right now that the Terran is sitting at 2-2. WhiteRa is sitting at 2-2 as well, so the upgrades are fairly close. Looking at the units lost tab, it's been pretty close on that scale as well, but when I look at that supply, that is the major turning factor. 165 to 199, and it looks like BC is preparing to make his move here. He's got a really strong army with Vikings, Marauders, Marines, and Ghosts as well, and I don't know what the hell WhiteRa is going to be able to do about this. He's going to have to land some pretty key storms. He does get a feedback off on one of the Ghosts, but the Ghosts just snipe the Templar in response, and the Ghosts continuing to walk in there. They get a bunch of great EMPs off, and now WhiteRa is losing all of his Colossus as well. The Vikings are out of there. They take a little bit of superficial damage from that storm, but nothing too serious. The Sentry's like, don't worry guys, I got this. I'll finish off those Vikings myself. Meanwhile, Marauders and Marines going in for the snipe on the Templar, but the Templar remain alive. Very nice job. That Sentry's still alive as well, but then takes one last shot from the Marauder and will go down. I will say that WhiteRa did a pretty good job in this engagement. He kept most of his Templar alive, and he was able to keep, he was able to keep away from that Terran army. BeastyQT never found the opportunity that Terran players are always looking for. If they can get a bunch of great EMPs off, then they're going to stem their whole army and run in there. Unfortunately for the Terran, BeastyQT, he didn't ever really get that money EMP. He didn't really get the snipes he was looking for, and so he never went in with his whole army. That wasn't the best engage for him. I think WhiteRa slowly clawing his way back here, but it's going to take a lot more than that. And no, WhiteRa losing his Templar right there, which is obviously not a good initiation for the Protoss player. And now we even have a nuclear missile coming as well. So It looks like BeastyQT is going to be taking all the way up to Nuclear Arsenal, and it looks like he gets a couple more snipes off as well. I'm not too sure what WhiteRa is going to be able to do, man, especially when that nuclear missile finishes. Beasty's going to be able to launch a nuke right here, or maybe even right here, and I don't know if WhiteRa can really even do anything about the nuke. It will force WhiteRa to engage, I almost feel like. But here we go. It looks like WhiteRa with a great spread. He has got a bunch of charge slots here, but most of them getting EMP'd, and the Widow Mine goes off as well, doing a ton of damage. Meanwhile, Storm comes down. Marines and Marauders able to get out of harm's way, and a lot of the Vikings in no man's land, they all get killed off here, but they were able to pick off most of the Colossus as well, so they did their job before going down. This is a big battle. Will WhiteRa be able to survive? I don't think so. BeastyQT's just got too many forces. One more storm comes down, but it's just you know, it's a desperation storm right there from WhiteRa to try to keep this army back, and here comes the nuclear missile. Now, WhiteRa only sees the little red dot, and he got EMP'd as well. He's got to pull away from the little red dot because that nuke is coming down. It looks like this last Archon might take a little bit of damage, and that is about it. Wow, that was super close, and BeastyQT probably thinking in the back of his mind there, damn, if only WhiteRa had stayed there for just a few seconds more, I would have got the money nuke off. Unfortunately for him, it didn't play out that way. You know, the units lost tab is quite close. I think all in all, WhiteRa has been able to slowly claw his way back through this game. The key thing here is he's been able to establish expansions here and an expansion here, and he hasn't lost either one yet in the last few minutes. He did lose this one earlier in the game, but he's been able to establish thus far. Now, if he can deflect these medevac harasses without too many losses, he should be sitting in a pretty okay position. He did lose a Templar there, but it's not a big deal. Meanwhile, though, major drop going on inside the Protoss base. WhiteRa needs to use recall or something, but unfortunately, he did not have any forces nearby. He cannot use the Mothership recall, and it looks like the only ability the Mothership was able to do right there was Photon Overcharge on the Nexus, which really didn't do that much at all. Now WhiteRa bringing back most of his forces, but will it be enough? It looks like he will be able to clean up those two drops. Meanwhile, in the middle of the map, another EMP going off on WhiteRa's main army. He cannot hold the ground here, and it looks like he will lose this expansion this time. There's no doubt about it. The Nexus is going to go down, and it looks like the Ghost did die at least, so the nuke isn't going to go for the overkill. But at the same time now, WhiteRa is starting, I think, to unravel. There's just so much pressure being applied by the Terran player. The constant drops inside the main base, the snipe of this Nexus, and then even the little outworld drops right here in this expansion have just applied so much pressure to WhiteRa. I feel like he might be starting to buckle a little bit. Will he be able to maintain his composure and stay in this game? He's not that far behind in supply. You can see the upgrades are tied right now. They are maxed out for both players. That Ghost just got the achievement, killing photon cannons while cloaked, yo. And it looks like that Ghost is going to go down, but man, I feel like WhiteRa is, yeah, I don't know if he's going to be able to pull it through. We'll just have to wait and see. Of course, BeastyQT is just playing a phenomenal game, and you've got to say for him, he hasn't taken any damage at any of his expansions this entire game, really. The entire battle for the last 25 minutes has been BeastyQT applying pressure and WhiteRa the one receiving the pressure. Finally, WhiteRa is going to try to switch the tables a little bit with this Zealot Harass, but at the same time, Beasty is here with a couple of Marauders, and those Marauders aren't going to be able to kill off a Nexus without the cancellation from WhiteRa because he wasn't paying attention, and that is brutal. 400 minerals right there that you'll never see again, and WhiteRa's gotta be kind of pissed off about that because if he had been looking, he probably would have hit the escape button to get the cancel off and get his money recuperated. Unfortunately for him, that is not the way things played out, and BC continues to pile on the hurt. He's got 4 more medevacs coming up to the top side here, preparing for another massive drop, and I don't know. You know, the thing here is WhiteRa doesn't have an observer. He has no idea that this drop is inbound, and all of his gateways, even his robotics facilities and his tech are exposed should this drop come through. But it looks like Beasty is going to pull back and maybe wait. I'm not too sure what he's waiting for. He's now separating his medevac, so that's a little weird. Meanwhile, nuclear missile coming down from Beasty, and he's going to try to use one of these tactical nukes to gain a territory advantage against WhiteRa, but WhiteRa just says, screw that, man, I'm going to leave my base and go down here. But he's got to be careful about the possibility of this army just stimming up, running in, and sniping this Nexus off. That is, you know, obviously a large threat right now. Should WhiteRa lose another base, it is not going to bode well for him. Meanwhile, the four medevacs, in fact, coming in, 2 of them dropping at the natural, the other 2 dropping over here. Now WhiteRa is coming in from all sides. He's going to try to crush this Terran army while his bases are under attack from constant drops. It looks like he's got enough zealots to push the major brunt of the army away. Despite the constant stutter stepping from BeastyQT, he is not going to have enough energy to continue this fight if WhiteRa continues to press on. But it looks like WhiteRa says, screw it, I'm going to go into the natural now. Meanwhile, he loses his base. He loses all of his tech, in fact. His support bay, his Twilight Council, his Templar Archives have all gone down, and so now WhiteRa cannot produce any of his core units any longer. That's why his production tab is now completely emptied out, and at the same time, he's got to try to save his bases. He can't continue to let that drop take out all of his buildings, but that's exactly what is happening right now, and I don't know what the hell he is going to do. I think BeastyQT has game 2 in the bag, short of a miracle from WhiteRa. This game has just been too much for him, and too much pressure applied from the Terran player, who's just a beast, to say the least. The beast from the east. And now it looks like WhiteRa, I mean, he's got a few more forces left behind, just kind of straggling around here. I think he's just going to go for one last-ditch attack. You know, he's got a sizable army, so it's not like he's completely out of it yet. But what about his gateways? All of his tech has gone down. He has no way to save his buildings because all of his units are on the other side of the map. I guess at the same rate, BeastyQT doesn't really have that many forces at home either, so he is also in danger of losing a lot of his facilities. But if you look at the supply differential, once again, the Terran is at a massive advantage. And I can't really say the same for the Protoss player. Even the nuclear missile is coming down as well, and it is safely tucked away in the back, so we might have another nuclear missile coming down soon. Meanwhile, these 4 ghosts coming in with the cloak, and as long as they're cloaked, they can actually take out this entire Protoss army. WhiteRa can't do anything about it. He has to call GG well played, and BeastyQT takes the victory. What a game right there. 30 minutes, and game 2 goes to Beasty, who now ties it up after the cheese from WhiteRa. And so we're going to be going on to game 3 here. I really hope you guys enjoyed the cast. I'll see you guys in video 3. For now, this is HD StarCraft, and I am signing out.